What's up, guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about a lot, but mainly the Penn State and Michigan State football game that took place in Spartan Stadium today. In Penn State, they fell for their fifth loss, their fifth out of 7 games, and they're coming off of a win last week. They lost 30-27. And there are many things about this game that I'd like to get into, but first, before I get into anything, I just want to explain that obviously James Franklin could have done a better job. But this game is not on James Franklin. This game still could have been won with the way James Franklin had coached it, but the execution on the players did not allow them to do that. So if I had to pick one thing about this game to blame it on, one reason why they won, it would be the execution of the players this time. So I just want to get that out of the way before I go on my annual James Franklin rant. But first we're going to get with the execution of the players. So Sean Clifford, first off, that's what everyone wants to talk about. Clifford, he made an amazing play on 4th and 24 when we were down by 10. I mean, he evaded the pressure, he dodged someone, he juked someone out, and he delivered a bullet to Brenton Strange. And that was the best play I've ever seen him make by far as a Penn State Nittany Lion. In what may be his second to last game, in my opinion. I like the man, but I hope it's his second to last game with this program. I really hope whatever bowl game we go to is his last game, because I don't want to see him in a Nittany Lions uniform next year. I just don't think it'd be worth it for the short and long term. So the execution of the players wasn't very good. I mean, keep in mind there was snow, which obviously affected both teams, but the kicking game today was kind of non-existent for both teams. Penn State missed an extra point and a field goal, and Michigan State missed an extra point. So let's just say all of those scores were added, then the final score would have been 31-31, and we would have gone to overtime, but that's not exactly how it went. So Penn State, like I said, they lost by 3, but overall, man, I mean, I can't tell you. Jahan Dotson is an amazing player. And literally the first half, our game plan was just throw it to Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington. And it really just shows how James Franklin, he just gets carried by his talent, which to an extent isn't a bad thing, because obviously you want to utilize your talent, you know? But in my opinion, this team doesn't have a backbone. They don't have a support system. If they need someone to go to in a close game, like, hey, can you help me out? No, they can't. They can't do that because the people... James Franklin and the offensive coordinator as well, they're not helpful. They either hurt the team in a negative way or they don't help them at all, and they're just a public figure. If the team wins, it's because of the execution of the players and solely of the execution of the players. And if they lose, then it's the execution of the players, and it might be because of the coaching too. But the coaching never has anything to do with a win, and it most likely never has anything to do with either. It's really just there. It's a public figure, and it's why I don't get why we extended him, hence especially why we extended him for so long. But the second half, Penn State, they went into halftime, they were down 17-14 against Michigan State. Very snowy game, like I said. If you thought Ann Arbor was bad with Michigan, Ohio State, there was 10 times more snow on the field for Penn State and Michigan State. And keep in mind, both games were played in the state of Michigan. But nevertheless, the game plan changed, right? You're playing Michigan. Michigan got exposed by Ohio State, and they have great receivers. But there's no doubt that the coverage sucked. Like, let's be honest, that the pass coverage against Ohio State was abysmal. And it didn't help whenever they're going up against a, three-headed monster wide receiver with Smith-Njigba and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And obviously C.J. Stroud, he's an amazing quarterback. But, obviously, all those things doesn't help. But Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington, they were balling out, especially Dotson. They were the reason why we were in this game, similar to the game that we won against Maryland. But then the game plan changed. You see, we went away from what was working. Because, keep in mind, Michigan State has one of the worst pass coverages in the FBS. They got exposed last week. They were getting exposed in the first half. But then we ran the football. And don't get me wrong, seeing a run game exist in the second half was so refreshing as a Penn State fan, because we have not had a run game this entire season. And it creates place opportunity for the play action. But we ran the ball 3/4 of the time, which is just odd to me, because if it's working, it's working. And it was working to an extent, not as well as passing the ball was, but that would make sense. Why would you run the ball 80% of your snaps in the fourth quarter and second half primarily whenever you're going up against a team who lack pass coverage? That doesn't make any sense. And then the other thing is, I don't think this is a terrible loss, because I feel like Penn State and Michigan State, they're similar teams on paper. Like, honestly, Penn State should be ranked at around the same ranking as Michigan State. They have similar, if not better, talent than Michigan State, other than, obviously, Kenneth Walker. He's the best player on the field. There's just no denying that. But, like I was saying, Penn State was favored to win this game on the road, right? Michigan State, they had players out. They were understaffed. They were undermanned because of this flu that was going around their team. They didn't have some players play. But Penn State still couldn't get the job done. It's like they shifted away from what was working and what kept them in a competitive game. And I thought this would be a competitive game. I never doubted that it would be a competitive game. I would have been very surprised if it was a blowout one way or another. Obviously, I would have been happy if it was a blowout for Penn State. But like I'm saying, it just doesn't make remote sense. You're going away from MSU's weakness. And even though the run game's working, it's not working as well as the passing game. And when you consider that you weren't taking any play action passes off of that run game, it really just doesn't make sense to me because that was holding the team back. It really was. So I don't get that coaching adjustment. Although technically it worked, it wasn't as efficient, and it just didn't make sense with the type of team that you're going up against. But James Franklin, he gets on my nerve because I don't think he's a bad coach. I just don't think he's that great. And I'm just going to go in depth about all this possible scenarios with Franklin. You could fire him, right? They're not going to do that now because they just signed to do a 10-year deal for whatever reason. But they could fire him. Now, what would you do if that happened? You have to get a new coach. So you can either go from the coaching tree that you have now and get a coordinator and upgrade him, or you could get someone from the outside coming in. I prefer someone from the outside coming in, but that's just my opinion. Obviously, it depends on what school they're coming from. But let's just say we were to fire Franklin and we were to get a coach that's worse than him. That would suck. And I agree. I understand why you wouldn't want to fire James Franklin. I get that point of view, and I think it's valid because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I 100% agree with that. And I also agree that, there are not many coaches out there. There aren't many teams out there that year in and year out can go out there and beat Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State every single year. It's not going to happen, and I get that. Nick Saban wouldn't be able to do that. He'd lose to one of those teams, most likely Ohio State or Michigan, but he'd lose to one of those teams if he had Alabama in the Big Ten. I don't doubt that for a second. So I get a lot is asked of James Franklin, and I'm not expecting to go to the college football playoff every year. I'm not expecting for us to go 12-0 every year, and anything less is an utter disappointment. And I don't expect for us to beat OSU every year. But what I do expect is whenever you are in so many close games against top 25 teams, okay? And I'm not talking about, Bo Nix in the whiteout, and they're ranked, and Auburn's ranked 22, or, Wisconsin at the beginning of the year on the road. Impressive win. I'm not going to deny that. That was a good win for the Nittany Lions. But whenever those are your program's main wins for the past 4 years, you really have an issue. Like, you just have a genuine issue. And, you beat Shea Patterson, too, in 2017. My bad. And in 2019. My bad. Actually, it wasn't Patterson in 2017. But nevertheless, I digress. We beat John Harbaugh in a whiteout game in 2017, 2019. Good job, guys. What do you want, a trophy? I mean, it's a good win, but, you have to do more than that. And whenever they have the opportunity to do more than that, when the one time Franklin did, it was because he had so much NFL talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Trace McSorley, Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Deshaun Hamilton, Chris Godwin, Mike Gesicki, everyone, just so many players on that team were NFL bound. Of course that was the year you beat Ohio State. Of course that was the year you ran the table with those three teams. It should be. It should be the year. But in 2017, with a lot of those same players still on the team, you blew a lead to Ohio State. The team came out unmotivated and they lost to Michigan State. You're going to notice that pattern. They lose one game and they look super unmotivated. Their confidence tanks and they just don't know what to do. Okay? Their situational play calling is terrible. It's bad. It's just not good. And I know that's three fancy ways of saying that it's below average, but I just don't know what else to say. It's just not good. The execution in crucial moments. I'm talking about you're playing a top 15 team. We're in the Big Ten part of the season, the meat grinder of the season. We're getting into our Big Ten schedule, and we're playing, say, the Michigan Wolverines. I won't even say Ohio State. We're playing Michigan, right? We have to get this win. And it seems as though whenever we get into that part of the season, Franklin loses in close games so much. We have the lead and we blow it. The coaching never helps. If we win, the coaching isn't the reason why, they're just there. If we lose, the coach isn't the reason why, and they're just there. Or they are part of, if not almost the entire reason why that happens. You can't tell me that in 2017 and 2018, we shouldn't have won at least one, if not both of those games against Ohio State. You can't tell me the same thing about Michigan State in 2017, 2018. We should have won both, if not at least one of those games. But we failed to do that. And it's becoming a systemic issue. Because I get the grass isn't always greener. What if we get a head coach who sucks more? Let me tell you, if that head coach sucks, it's really not going to... Do you think that with the recruiting class that we're going to get, that if we had a terrible head coach, we'd be below 6-6? I do not. I think our talent would be enough to carry us to around the record that we have right now with James Franklin. And that record is 7-5. That's right, folks. We were 5-0. Now we're 7-5. We beat Maryland and Rutgers after being 5-0 and 4th ranked in the nation. Iowa, we had that game. That was in our hands. Illinois, we had that game. That was in our hands. Michigan, we had that game. It was in our hands. Right there's 3 losses, folks. And then you can also argue that the Ohio State game, that was a close game. And if we had good coaching and better execution by Sean Clifford against a team that was better than his when it really mattered, there's a decent chance that could have been a game that Penn State could have taken and stolen. But they didn't, and I don't blame them. So, like I said, you could do worse, but I really don't think you could do much worse with the type of recruiting we're going to get. I love James Franklin as a recruiter. He's a great recruiter. But let me tell you, he's nothing better than an average coach. Okay, he can get all the talents in the world, but the way he coaches, or I should say the way he doesn't coach and is really just a public figure, the way he does business, when those players he recruits gets on the field, it holds them back. He's holding back the players that he's recruiting. If he was just Penn State's recruiting manager or something like that, I'd be so happy. I'd love the man. But since he's the coach, he's ruining that talent. He's driving away some of that recruiting, and I get firing him would drive away some recruiting too. But I feel if we were able to get a coach, and a coach who was just better than him. It doesn't have to be Nick Saban. A coach that's just better than him. I really believe that we'd end up getting actually better recruiting. We'd see better results. And like I said, I'm not expecting... I give James Franklin credit. A lot is asked from him year in and year out when you play Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. And he's a good recruiter. But at some point, you have... whenever you're winning all 3 of those games by 2 or more possessions, and you have those games in the bag, you need to win those games, okay? We should at least be contending for a college football playoff fairly deep into the season at the bare minimum, but we're not. Over these past 2 years, he's been 11-11, okay? And I get it. You can say last year is a COVID year. I'm willing to give you that. But it seems like every single time we play a big team that isn't just borderline top 25 and we start to get into the meat grinder of the season, we crap our pants. We absolutely crap our pants. Or we play a team who's not bad, but they're worse than us, and we crap our pants because why? We lost the week before. We keep crapping our pants, and we don't know what to do. The play calling is just not good. I don't understand it. I never will understand it. Why was a man? How can you not think that this man is at least a little suspect? Okay, I'm not saying that Franklin needs to be fired. I'm just saying I wouldn't care if he is fired. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Because honestly, even if we got a coach that was worse than him for a year or 2 on accident, I think we'd see similar results to what we see now. Right? He's a great recruiter. He's nothing better than an average coach. I'm not a fan of him. He doesn't do anything that makes sense, and I don't know why, but it seems like Penn State is willing to accept that this is the best we're going to get. No, you have to reach for the stars. But this program, I mean, you just saw Michigan today. They beat Ohio State. They hadn't beat Ohio State in 10 years. But you know what? Out of all the harsh comments that Jim Harbaugh's taken throughout his tenure at Michigan because he hasn't been able to beat Michigan State Ohio State, after not beating Ohio State over 10 years as the program as a whole for Michigan, they won today because they didn't give up. They had heart. And that's something that you don't see in a team led by James Franklin after they lose by 1 game. All right? They won. Okay? He rallied his team. His team that already lost 1 game. His team that some of the players had in their heads, oh, it's Ohio State. Ohio State owns Michigan. No. They genuinely believed that they could win. And that's something that I just don't see in this Penn State team other than Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington after we lose one game. It's something that I don't see aside from our best players on the field every single year. I don't see any heart. I don't see any will to win. I don't see any motivation from the coach. He can go on Twitter and say 1-0 all he wants, but let me tell you, that isn't a real form of motivation. All right, anyone who's sitting here and telling me Franklin's doing a good job, and I'm like I said, if we were to go 10-2 and 9-3 every now and then, okay, would it be an off year? Yes, but I'd understand because we play Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State every single year. He has a tough job. He has a lot to be asked from him, but he is underperforming. He's underperforming his expectations that are already high, which means that we should be more lenient with him. He's underperforming that. Okay? He's underperforming the bare minimum. He's underperforming what should be the worst case scenario. And like I said, the grass isn't always greener. So this team's really in a rock and a hard place. And now basically, James Franklin is the program. Okay, you might as well go to the center of the field and put a picture of James Franklin's face right there and just get rid of the Nittany Lion name and just put the James Franklins, because that's basically what this team is. He can do whatever he wants. He's a dictator. Make him the athletic director too when we're at it. You might as well. Okay, James Franklin, he takes teams that are similar in talent to Michigan, similar in talent to Michigan State, Oklahoma State. What do? We go 7-5. Okay, the fact that this team isn't even in the top 25 at the bare minimum is absolutely embarrassing, and it's not acceptable. The fact that we lost to Illinois is embarrassing and not acceptable. The way we lost to Iowa, I get backup quarterback. We would have won with Sean Clifford, but we still should have won that game with Franklin, okay? The way we are losing games is just embarrassing. And when we need it the most, our execution's terrible. Sure, after we fumbled the kickoff and was recovered by Michigan when we were down by 10 with 5 minutes left, we still had a chance if we hadn't fumbled that kickoff. But even though we stopped them on 4th down and they didn't get any points, let me tell you something. Yeah, our offense went down and scored a touchdown. Yes, Sean Clifford had what I believe to be the best play of his Penn State career. But let me tell you, it didn't matter. It was too late. It was too late. The time had already been removed from the clock because of fumbling the ball. It was too late. So yes, they made a last-second push, and there was still a chance. But if they just would have been able to execute it when it mattered most, when it mattered more, then they would have had a chance to potentially get the ball back and try to win this game. Right? I feel that James Franklin is he's just not good for this program. He's not. He's implanted into the system. He's programmed into the system of Penn State Nittany Lion football for the next 10 years. Okay, we could fire him. We won't, but if we truly wanted to, if we really got the nerve to do it, we would owe him, let's just say we did it 3 years into his contract. We would owe him probably around $50 million because we signed him for 10 years for $75 million. If he would have done that in 2016, okay. You're doing that now? Okay, like I said, the grass isn't always greener. Sure, give him a 1 to 3 year extension. The recruits will still stay. They'll still come in because they'll have Franklin and they'll want to help him reclaim his job and make that extension more. But not 10 years. Have you seen what's been on the field? Ever since all the NFL talent left and James Franklin's coaching has been more dependent on the team's success than what it was before, right back to square one. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that I'm back to the days where Christian Hackenberg was the quarterback of this team and we were 7-5. No, we have Jahan Dotson, Parker Washington, and Sean Clifford. We have Joey Porter Jr., the son of the Hall of Fame middle linebacker. We have a stellar defense who, for whatever reason, just has not shown up. And I can't explain why. And this team, why would you give him a 10-year extension? That means that you're accepting what he's brought to you. You're not questioning it. You think it's okay, and I get it. Like I said, he plays Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. He's not going to win all 3 of those games every single year, nor do I expect him to, especially against Ohio State. But he should have beat them at least once over the last 5 years, if not more. In my opinion, he should have beat them twice. But at least once. But he can't do that because his coaching holds us back. See, he can get all the recruits that he wants, but if he's the coach on the field, he's holding back those recruits. And the people from the outside know. They're too scared to say it. Okay, if Jim Harbaugh, I heard arguments that Jim Harbaugh should be fired if he did not beat Ohio State, and I do think those were valid arguments. If that's the case, if you think Jim Harbaugh should be fired, at least he's showing more consistency with the records that he's holding in Michigan. And like the final season, the records at the end of the season, at least they're more consistent than what James Franklin has been giving us. Right? In Michigan, they could be a program on the rise now with that victory against Ohio State. It could be a rivalry where every other year a new team wins and it's Michigan one year, Ohio State the next year. It could be that now. And he proved people wrong. And I have yet to see James Franklin do that. No one was calling for his job in 2016, but when people are now, when a good amount of people are now, he hasn't answered the call. We extended him for 10 years. So that tells me that we're okay with what's happening. We're not questioning it. We're accepting it. And we think that, oh, we can do nothing better, so let's just give him the deal. No, that's not the mentality that you have. Okay? He has control of this team. We have incentives not to fire him. Even if we went 0-12, we probably wouldn't fire him if it was the first couple of years into his contract, because we just owe him so much money. We've put ourselves into the debt of James Franklin, and I do not like that. I don't like that at all. So whatever you ate for lunch today, whether it was, ribs or something as simple as peanut butter pie, whatever you ate for lunch today, that's probably going to be the name of the bowl that Penn State appears in. Heck, they could be in the Cinnamon Toast Crunch Bowl. If that's what you ate for lunch, there's a good chance. They might create it just so Penn State could be the first team to ever lose in it. And that's all I have to say about that. Second, we're going to get into a game that is important to the Big Ten, and that was Ohio State and Michigan State. Michigan. They did it. Michigan did it. They finally beat Ohio State. In Ohio State, they have 2 losses. Their Big Ten championship hopes are over. Their college football playoff hopes are most likely over, barring an absolute miracle. And Michigan has finally done it. They're going to play Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. And Michigan, if they win that game, they're in the playoff. Right? I want to see that type of stuff from James Franklin. I don't expect Michigan to be in the playoff every single year now just because they beat Ohio State. But I expect for them to continue to contend for that playoff spot and every now and then get back. That's what Penn State should be doing. That's what the expectation should be with James Franklin. It should be, okay, we're not going to make the playoff every year. We're not going to be as dominant as Ohio State every single year. But there's going to be that one year, maybe throughout every 5, where we get that win and we make the playoff, or we come close to making the playoff, or we show progress. And we just have not done that. We haven't done that in the past half decade. We've gone backwards every single year. And I quite literally mean every single year. You can say, oh, in 2018, they went from 9-3 to 10-2. Ooh, 1 win difference. We've gone, our program's on the decline ever since 2016, which should have been the exact opposite. The recruiting had to have gone up. I mean, who would have wanted to go to Penn State when Christian Hackenberg was there other than someone who was a loyalist like Saquon Barkley to his state? Who would have wanted to go? No one. Who would have wanted to go whenever they beat Ohio State and won the Big Ten championship? You're raising some more eyebrows there, James, and look what you've done with it. And I have no doubt that with the recruiting class you're going to get, we might improve, but we're going to find a way to blow it with you at the helm. I have no doubt. But like I said, Michigan they finally win. Hassan Haskins, amazing player. Aiden Hutchinson, amazing player. Good effort by Ohio State, but they did it. Michigan did it. That's the most electrifying environment I have ever seen in college football. I'm calling it out right now. Aside from the whiteout, that's the most electrifying event. And I'll say the post-game celebration was the best I've ever seen in any sport ever. So there's my view on that game. Then finally, another game I'm sure you guys want to hear me talk about, Auburn and Alabama. Auburn was so close to beating Alabama. They're up 10-0. But then their quarterback, TJ Finley, he injured his ankle. And he played, except he did not look the same the rest of the game. And Alabama, they took advantage of this. And they went into overtime. They tied it up with just 30 seconds left. They went into overtime 10-10. They went into 4 overtimes. And Alabama was able to win in the 2-point conversion contest and win 24-22. Now, if Alabama plays remotely like that, they are going to lose in pretty convincing fashion to Georgia and not make the college football playoff. they need to change something up. And it's disappointing that Auburn couldn't win. But at the end of the day, I take comfort in the fact, and I'm very confident that Georgia is going to be able to beat Alabama. But I also wouldn't be shocked because Alabama is known to pull, quite frankly, some BS with that. But that's my opinion on the games today. That's my opinion on the Penn State game. And, man, James Franklin is taking this program to uncharted waters. The first Pinstripe Bowl and Music City Bowl appearance ever. 5-0 to 7-5. What a turnaround. What a way to turn around the season in the middle of it. When all hopes were lost, we took back our true primitive form. Is this really what you want to see, Penn State? Is this truly acceptable to you, or are you just too scared to tell somebody no? Because I really think you're just too scared. But as always, we are.